Oh, you caught me ironing. Hello Internet, I'm Matt at Overkill Woodcraft. Would you like to learn how to cover up this gross plywood end grain with a nice edge banding and all while using minimal tools that won't break the bank? Well then hang out and that's what we'll talk about. Alright, so here's the tools that I use when edge banding. First up, we've got an iron. It doesn't need to be anything more than a $2 iron at Goodwill, which is exactly what that is. Then you have the edge trimmer, all right, for trimming off the excess that's overlapping the wood. There's dozens of them out there. This is the one that I settled upon, that I have found that works the best, especially for porous wood grains such as red oak. It's the Virutech ET6. I'll put a link down in the description. Depending on the edge banding, I'll also like to use a file. This one's specifically meant for edge banding, but really any file will work as long as it has a diagonal pattern on it. The rubbing stick. Yes, that's exactly what I call it, as a rubbing stick. I use it after ironing to make sure that the glue adheres. That's a scrap piece of pine that I rounded the edges on at 220. This isn't necessary. You can use scissors instead, but these do help. They're miter scissors. Basically, you can adjust these at an angle. You really only need them for a 90 degree. Again, there's dozens of them out there. This was a cheaper brand that I bought for, I believe it was 10 bucks off Amazon, and I wish I would have spent an extra $5 on a good set. And then a razor knife can also be applicable. I also want to talk quickly about a couple of different trimmers. What I look for in a trimmer ideally is that it has a standard blade. So this is just a standard razor blade right here. And when I'm doing thinner veneers, so this is birch, but for melamine, this is what I use over this. All right, this was $30 and this was $6 at Home Depot. It's just a scraper that also comes with a standard razor blade. For some reason, Milwaukee's razor blades work best in these. Some of the other brands I found are a little too loose and they won't sit in there. Some of these other ones that I've bought, I really only keep them here for display purposes. This one doesn't really have a completely standard razor blade in it, and I don't know, I just didn't really like the way it was cutting. This one I've seen a lot on there. Again, also not standard razor blades, so you get kind of pricey there. And it would actually, the heat from the wood being ironed would cause the yellowing in here to rub off on the wood. So again, they're basically trash in my opinion. I know what you're thinking. Matt, I don't have a fancy vise. Well, guess what? You don't need one. If you don't have a Moxon or a bench vise, you really just need 4 clamps and 2 pieces of scrap plywood. And this is exactly what you'll do with that. So you can see it's just 2 pieces of scrap plywood that I screwed together. And I mean, it's not going to work as quick as a fancy vise does, but it will definitely work. Making sure that this is nice and clean and free of debris. I'm going to get that lined up. Make sure that the iron is also clean and free of debris. Once I've got it lined up, I'm going to leave a little bit of overlap. All right. I'll cut that off later. I'm going to just anchor an end. It's especially helpful for longer stretches of edge banding. These are pretty short drawer fronts. If you get a little bit of slipping, that's fine. You have a little bit of time to mess with this while the adhesive is still setting. So once I've got it set and I feel like it's properly aligned, I'll then just let it cool down, take the rubbing stick to it. Now it's really on there. Then I'm going to go over the rest with nice, slow, and even passes. You don't need to apply a ton of pressure doing this. I mean, the adhesive is going to do most of the work for you. You can give it a little tilt if you want at the end. Right after I get done ironing, I'm going into my rubbing stick. It's going to do this for, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds. Let that cool down. And be careful, because you will cut yourself on this occasionally too. Normally I wear gloves. So now that we've got this secured, it's cool to the touch, I'm going to get rid of these ends. That's where these shears, these angle clippers come into play. It's a good clean cut. Now if you don't have these, you can use a pair of scissors. You can just use a regular pair of scissors, but I don't seem to get good results with that. You can see it's at an angle, and I'm going through. In this instance, I don't really have enough overlap to make a good cut with the clippers, so I'll just go right into my file, all right? I'm going to work into that 90 with my file, and then any of that little stuff left over, I'll just clean up with my sandpaper. All right, so I've got my edge cleaned up for the most part, and now we're going to go into the edge trimmer. Just going to want to take firm pressure. You can start at the middle, you can start at the end. I usually kind of just like to start at the middle. That way I don't have to worry about potentially hitting this at a weird angle, all right? It's firm pressure. Go the opposite direction. I'm going to hit this end. And this is where this is especially sharp. And because I'm going with the grain direction on the face of this piece of plywood, it's not as much of a concern to hit this at an angle, but I still try to do it just for good practice. So I'm trying just to ride that edge and literally sand only the edge. So after I've taken care of the edges, then I'm going to hit the face grain of the edge banding just a few times, just to smooth out any imperfections and make sure that whatever I'm putting on there, whether it's stain or paint, really adheres. Another good option here for this birch, since it's kind of a tighter grain, it's not as porous as stuff like red oak, is you could probably get away with using this scraper. But this is about the shortest length I would recommend trying to do this on this drawer front, all right? Because I like to treat this like those razors that the bald people use, all right? I anchor one end, and then I'm going to keep it nice and flat against the surface. It is kind of tricky, especially if you're using it on like a red oak plywood. Again, with more porous grain, you can catch the veneer and end up gouging the veneer. But with this, it's all pretty smooth, so we'll just go ahead again. So I anchor. I like to start at the middle. It's real quick and clean. And then I flip it. Just go the other way. All right, and it's a good clean edge right there. You can make it work with a razor knife. You just want to make sure that that blade is fresh and sharp. And you're going to want to hold the knife completely perpendicular almost to the piece. It's just a lot more tedious, a little riskier. But as you can see, you can still get really nice results. Same thing on this end. And as you can see there, it's easy to gouge the veneer on the plywood this way. So that's why I really don't like doing it. Thankfully, you can usually cover that up with the stain or whatever the case may be, even smooth it out. Because I would be sanding against the grain on this face grain of the veneer. I'm going to try to clean it up going with the grain as much as possible. And from there, I'll hit the face, get the corners, make sure those are a little smoothed out. All right, so another common issue that some people have, I mean, I know I have it occasionally, is you'll get these little pieces of tear out right here, all right, from the miter saw or the table saw or whatever the case may be. It's a pretty simple fix. You can just take one of these fill sticks and just rub that right in there, fill it in, and then you'll smooth it out when you sand it. All right, there you have it. Good, clean edge banding, all for the cost of a few inexpensive tools and some practice. If you enjoyed watching this video, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'm always happy to help out where I can. Thanks for watching.